am planning council member.
All right, Chris, we're just opening the meeting now. We're going to open up the special council meeting today, March 8th at 2:05. And we want to thank Gary and Chris for coming. Help us see what we can figure out for the vacation rentals.
Good.
So I think you guys were just going to kind of get into a question and answer dialogue with you.
Sounds good. Where do you want us?
Come on up. I don't know. Sit down next to Patrick or something there if you want, just so you got a mic.
I'm going to get Aaron. I'll just sit here and if you can. All right, I'll do the best I can.
Now, Mr. Wessel, you're from Planning and Zoning. We had put a few questions together. Is that not true?
Is Cheryl is she available over there?
Jackson just went to fetch them.
Okay.
He went to get Char. I'm going to start, Chris, with a little bit. Thank you much for coming.
Yeah, glad. Thanks for the
We've
invite.
worked well in the
always
past.
Good to be here, so.
Our dilemma is should Cross Lake take over the VRBO?
Yep.
Personally, myself, I would much rather partner with the county.
Sure.
Because then just for our local area, we could cover the whole Whitefish chain under the same blanket. Everybody would have the same rules.
Yep.
Where the question and concern is enforcement is one of them. How do we build a structure that we can go out and document, enforce, fine, penalize, make them sign up to be a VRBO, and if they don't, they get a big fine?
Yep. So I think the thing to make sure we understand is that our current, the previous ordinance that we had from 22 and previous was a public health ordinance, and that is an ordinance that applies to county, and the county applies to cities and townships. And so then the county board changed that ordinance to it's now a land use based ordinance. And so our ordinance applies to the unincorporated parts of the county. Cities can opt in to be part of that if you want. But the nuts and bolts of the ordinance that we had last year is the same ordinance you have this year. The only difference is it's a land use ordinance and not a public health ordinance. So the same triggers that you would have had last year for what would have been required for a license as far as septic capacity, all the things like that. The same enforcement that we had last year is the same enforcement we're going to have this year. So there really is nuts and bolts change to how it was administered previously. It's going to be the same way it's going to be administered this year in 23.
So I'm going to ask you, how do you respond to a complaint?
So we have there's the
24-hour call line.
Call number, yep, and that comes into a clearinghouse. And then from that point, their responsibility is to reach out to the contact person that's part of the license that's supposed to be able to respond, to that within 1 hour. And if that doesn't happen, then the call gets dispatched out to law enforcement, and then law enforcement would be the one to follow up at that point.
And how much exposure did you have to it during last year, during the season, we'll call it?
I've been with the county now for 6 weeks. So I was
6 weeks?
Yep, so
yeah,
I was not
okay.
part of it in the past, so I don't have that experience. So.
Because my personal, experience is that people are really frustrated because they make the call and nothing happens.
Sure.
And without documentation, nothing will happen.
Yep.
So is there anything we can do to improve on that?
The current model that we have in place is the current model that we have going forward. So we're going to continue using that 800 number as that call-in when there are those complaints. And
good, I got Gary's attention.
And Gary can step up and clarify if I missed something. So
yeah, the only changes, Mr. Mayor, would be we were giving folks 90 days before we shipped them over to the attorney's office for enforcement. We went to 45 days for this year. But the current, if you wanted to do a contract with the county, it would be your city attorney prosecuting. You could talk to your attorney and you can prosecute how you see fit. That could be a better option for the city.
Yeah, right.
When it comes to documentation, we are also, it's very similar, but we are trying to, I want to say validate complaints so that, they're real.
Well, right, and how are you going to do that? By an officer going out and seeing it, right?
Photos, video, if the neighbors have that. It's pretty easy to see if there's 15 cars parked on the road that kind of stuff. We have those types of, I want to say documentation that we've gotten from different short-term rentals.
So that's the neighbor next door, document it.
Or anybody in the
or
area
whoever.
that is
Yeah.
concerned with it. It doesn't have to be the neighbor. It can be like a mayor driving around the town,
Oh, come on. Well, I mean, that's where I heard the frustration last year, is that you call and you don't get through, or nobody responds, nobody comes out. It's at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, and our staff is gone, and our probably one squad that's on is on the other end of the town, whatever. They just don't get a response.
We had some different expectations with our vendor. I will tell you, it's still not perfect, but I am very confident with the hours that we spent with them on the gaps that we got feedback from just customers, that we've probably plugged a good chunk of the gaps, but there's just not a perfect system for this. Our staff isn't there at 2 in the morning. I'm sure city staff isn't there, other than some local law enforcement, our sheriff's
Right.
office. And then to substantiate what's going on. It's great with police report. We get those, and we're closing the loops, at least with our sheriff's office in any city that's contracting with us, to ensure that if law enforcement is dispatched, that we're getting the police report, and it is part of we still have the 3 complaints before we send you to the attorney's office to revoke the license.
And you guys don't have any kind of fines for the first complaint, or any?
Currently, we do not. Now, that's something you guys, as the enforcers of the ordinance, we would help get people in compliance, and we'd be the ones to go out there and say, you got too many people, this or that. If they don't comply, that's where we would package up the informational packet and send to the city attorney. Just like we do with the county attorney now.
Yeah, right. We've just got to try to get everybody to take time to do it, that's been our problem.
And I think, the first year, 2 years, I think we were pretty lenient with how long we let somebody to try to come into compliance. And I think that's where some of the frustration got with just anybody, that you're not doing anything. Well, we were giving people probably more time than maybe we should have. We cut it in half, is what we did.
How much time?
Who's on?
I'm Chris Graham.
Oh, go ahead.
How much time currently are you giving them to comply?
Yep, so currently we have a 45-day window, so we give them literally, after 15 days, we give them a letter, and then 30 days we'll give them a letter, 15 days or 2 weeks after that, one letter that goes to them saying, whatever the issue is, you need to be in compliance for whatever the issue would be. At the same time, that letter went to the attorney's office, and they start the enforcement action anyways. So that's what we're doing now.
So is the county thinking about doing any kind of fines for?
Currently, no.
Okay. I mean, that's where you're going to get some attention.
Why have you got the middleman in between the police?
The middleman between the police.
Are you referring?
The phone number that you're calling to complain doesn't really document. If you send a police officer out there, they have cameras, they can document, they can submit it to the city and let you know what's going on. They can submit it to the county. Unless it's just not enough police officers.
So
I don't know.
the
Why is
ordinance, how this ordinance was designed, it wasn't a punishment ordinance, I guess. What we want to do is educate a property owner how to rent or a short-term rental on a reasonable basis. So if at 2 o'clock in the morning, let's just say they have a party going on that the owner maybe wasn't aware of, even if you have the house rules that we put in place that everybody has to have, we want that owner to know what's going on and see if they can rectify it with their renter first before you burden law enforcement with maybe a noise complaint. Still a complaint, don't get me wrong, and it still is something that we would ask the owner to really watch and be more aware of. But we were trying to keep our law enforcement for more higher priority stuff, I'll just say. Not that this isn't a priority, but just trying to make it all work. So one area doesn't get bogged down with the load of this stuff.
Well, honestly, Gary, my, you know, maybe a little too aggressive, but a fine for a call, and maybe if they have a call complaint, it's a $500 fine. And the purpose of that is not to charge the taxpayers, put the burden on their shoulders to enforce it, but to get enough money so that you could get some manpower to cover it. You know, you could do it that way. So would the county have any appetite for that or not?
Currently, I don't believe they do.
Yeah.
You know, the ordinance as is 99% sure it's not getting changed for 2023. I will say I am really excited with what we have with our county attorney's office now, that our enforcement closure rate's gonna go through the roof for us, with how we're structured and not giving somebody basically 3 months, they're getting 6 weeks before, we're gonna try and get it set up in front of a judge to pull, you know, enforce the license.
So you couldn't even pull the license until that is done 6 weeks later?
Well, that's our standard operating procedure. If there's something really egregious, you can pull it at any time.
Yeah.
So it is still a case by case, but I will say that we're gonna try to err on the, you know, softer side of things, if you will.
Okay, Sandy?
May I ask a question? How many cities within the county have opted to go,
Sure.
you know, branch out on their own, and how many are staying to work with
Currently,
them?
we just have 4 cities that have signed up with Crow Wing. So you got Nisswa, Crosby, Deerwood, 50 Lakes.
And Breezy Point has got their own ordinance, I believe?
Yep, that's what Chansky has said to me, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe Pequot Lakes isn't gonna regulate them at all. I don't believe there's an issue, so there's another city that is not gonna be with a contract.
Who is that?
City of
Oh,
Pequot
Pequot.
Lakes.
Which one is not going to allow them? I thought one of them was not going to allow rentals.
You take like City of Cuyuna, they're not going to allow them in the residential districts. So they're gonna allow them in parts of their city, but not the whole city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I believe your ordinance might be written similar to something like that.
So the number of rentals in Cross Lake, how many do you have signed up? Or did you last year have signed up?
Yeah, right now we have 0.
Yeah.
I believe last year around 140, 45.
Oh, really? Well, that's more than I would have thought you would have said.
I think that was somewhere in there. You guys had the bulk of the
Yeah.
short-term rentals. We had a total of 480, and you guys were, Cross Lake has the most of any city or township.
And I think the people in Cross Lake believe we've got probably 250 of them or so here, and some of them just aren't playing by the rules. So that's another thing, is how do you get them to all sign up and be part of it?
So, you know, we use our web crawling software, like you're probably aware of. It's like 60, 65 different websites. You know the big ones, VRBO, Airbnb,
Yeah.
those. But there's a lot of different websites that will offer different rentals. What that doesn't get, we do ask the public if they're aware of short-term rentals in the neighborhood that is not licensed. We have the map right on our website to let us know. We go and investigate. That's kind of where we're at right now. And a lot of those that are probably not licensed probably haven't been maybe an issue, and people are okay with them in their real localized neighborhood because they haven't been a problem for them, is my assumption.
Yeah, I mean, I personally know 3, 4, 5 that are a problem and are not licensed, and, you know, I mean, it's just tracking them down, you know? And that's where my idea of the fines, you give them a fine, a pretty hefty one. Mark?
I just want to bring this up because I know you're talking about licensed ones, and then you brought up the unlicensed. I've been talking to Jake Freeze down there for 3 years on an unlicensed one. He had a 2-bedroom septic, and they're renting it out for 20 people, but 5 bedrooms. They built a new place over the old building. And I've been telling Jake, and nothing happened for 3 years. So I want to know why you're saying for licensed ones, you do stuff in 60 days or whatever, and now it's going to be 45. But this is one that's not even licensed, and you did nothing for 3 years. I called him multiple times. He knew about it. He agreed, yes, they only have a 2-bedroom septic. Nothing happened.
Sure. I don't have the specifics today. Sounds like a fail if that's legit. If it's, we have our nieces and our aunts or uncles and our family up here, and that's the 20 people, we're not gonna enforce that.
Right.
It was a rental. I called the police twice. Once they were hitting golf balls, one of them hit my house, one hit my boat. I called the police twice on it. So this isn't out.
Three cabins?
No, it's just one building.
What's one building?
This is being recorded, right? So we want them in the microphone?
Yeah, Mark, identify yourself when you come
Okay,
up here.
Mark Lindner, Cross Lake. And I had called Jake, and he knew, he had the address, he knew everything.
I'd have to look into it, I guess. I don't.
Well, it's just me saying, why is it,
Yeah.
if they have licenses is one thing, I would think you'd go after them more if they don't even have. So,
Okay.
not now, and they don't have a license.
Okay, Gary and Chris, our fire chief and some of them are coming up with what I believe are some pretty good forms where we will go out and do an inspections and that type of thing. One of my questions is going to be, would you guys be willing to look at those forms and approve them on a county level? Not necessarily saying you'll enforce any of them, any of that type of thing, but at least acknowledge them and that they're good and pass them off to the cities that you're working with so we can maintain some consistency between communities on what we're looking at to enforce these rentals. And I'm talking about safety issues predominantly, fire extinguishers, direction on how they get out of the building. Yeah,
Smoke
you know,
detectors and stuff?
common sense things.
Sure. It's going to be very frankly, no, we won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it answers my question. Yeah.
So if we, partner with the county, are we at liberty to do our own enforcement if we so desire?
So how it would work is we have the process of the 45-day window to get them into compliance. If they're not in compliance for whatever the issue is, we would package it up and send it to your city attorney, and you guys can do whatever you believe is just for enforcement, whether that's fines or revoke their license right away, or however you guys want to set that up, that would be between you and your city attorney.
But we can't do anything outside of, within those 45 days?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would assume, Gary, if it was egregious enough, then the timetable would come.
Absolutely, and
That's-
I guess I shouldn't have a hard no on there. If there's something that's really like just,
Yeah, it's-
really disturbing, let's just say,
Yeah.
that's something that we can definitely speed up the clock on.
I don't know if that helps you or not. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, what's the line?
Well, and I tell you, that's where the rubber hits the road. What is the line, And it's hard. I mean, it just is. It's kind of gray.
To the next door neighbor, it's huge.
Correct.
To the person on the other side of town, they don't care,
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, something I mean, it'd be nice if we could do it, but I think the city's gonna probably just have to do their own thing. We're on the lake here,
Come together as
and
a,
across
a
the
city.
bay of the lake is Ideal Corners or 50 Lakes or something, and so but that is what it is. I guess until, maybe there'll be a day when you guys get enough heat and you gotta pick it up a little bit or something, but that'll be somebody else.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, that's just evolution.
Yep.
Does anybody else have anything? Mark, come on up. I figured Mr. Wessel didn't come here just to look.
Never been known for staying quiet for very long. Couple questions I'd have is council could actually adopt this ordinance that they have and have the paperwork done next week, and we have the county. Right now, we don't have a rental ordinance in Cross Lake. Nobody's doing it. So we could actually have them up and running with us in a week. By the time there's all kinds of people out there that have spent years enforcing short-term rentals in the state of Minnesota. I'm being facetious. Finding somebody to do that on a short-term basis with a brand-new ordinance, it could be months before you get this up and running. And at least by having the county do it this year, and keep in mind, they're talking about they don't think they're going to do anything new with the ordinance this year. That doesn't mean we can't lobby the county board. Could you add this? Could you add this? Could you do this too? That doesn't mean in the meantime, while we have them enforcing it, that we couldn't lobby the county board. That's who's going to they're taking their orders from, is to could we have some fines? Could we do some things like this? Could we do some things like that? And could we ramp up that enforcement a little bit more? And the other thing is, again, the ordinance has changed again a little bit, and there's enforcement in there, but it all steps back to if there's a kegger party going on next door to you, I understand it's pretty annoying, but if it was the next door neighbor and not our renter, you're still gonna have the same problem.
Mark, I hear that all the time.
Yep.
A neighbor is an owner, they're a property taxpayer, they're there. There is a difference, but when you're a for-profit business running next door, to me, it's just a different can of worms.
Well, it is, but again, the numbers would be, I talked to Eric Lee yesterday and asked him how many complaint calls he got. He said it was only around 30 last year. He didn't have his paperwork in front of him. I was hoping he'd be here today and with some research on that, but you know, he's got other things to do too.
He's on another call, but he said he'd come as soon as he can.
Okay, good, because I went and talked to him yesterday because I told him, I said, I never realized how many people there were peeing off the neighbors' decks in this town, but apparently that's something that happens every Friday night, so I guess I never thought of it, never happened to me, but anyways, that's nobody, I never got caught anyway, so, but it's, so, and the thing, okay, so that's.
Enough said. See, there's enough people in town here that are really ticked off about it, and they want to see something done.
I agree, but you also have to balance that, and that's what I think the county's trying to do, is that there are some people that no matter what you do, they're not gonna be happy because you're having more fun than they are.
And that's.
And so you have that. And I don't know if you saw that in the county ordinance, they actually have fines in there for false reporting.
Yeah.
So there.
As I think there should be.
And I would agree that you should have maybe, I don't think a first offense fine, because keep in mind, the homeowner's 3 hours away or something like that. I have a good friend who had a place that was rented out right behind him. That homeowner gave my friend his phone number. He said, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning, if there's a problem, call me. I'll drive up there that night and kick those renters out. And he did on 2 occasions.
Well,
So
that's a good one.
And there are those renters out there, so I don't think are those homeowners out there that are responsible
Absolutely.
renters. I don't want to punish everybody because of the sins of a few. So you have to somehow balance that. And to me, sticking with the county for at least another year and lobbying them, here's problems we're still having, can we go to the county board, could you update the ordinance to include this and this and this? There's a few things like that you could do. I think that'd be in a short-term fix anyway, so we'd have an ordinance going before we get to the rental season. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else have anything to throw in? Chip, you've been, and Peter, you guys have been working on do you have, or when should we expect the new work that you're doing?
We met last week, was it? And I think we got another draft that'll be in your packet.
That will be in the packet?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Wasn't Brad going to make some minor changes and?
Just some minor changes, corrections, yeah. The one thing that I disagree with the county is there's no life safety. Again, I'm going to push that again. There's nothing to do with life safety, zero. That's very important. If you look across the country, everybody has ordinance, a lot of it's life safety. There's none of it right now.
I think I can speak for most of us up here that we want to be a little more aggressive with it in a lot of different aspects, so.
Life safety, fire extinguishers, plans of escape, working carbon dioxide, bedrooms that have egress, all that.
Occupancy, I mean. Okay, well, nobody else
Mr.
have
Mayor?
anything? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering
Is
when
this Chris
you
again?
It's Chris.
All right, identify yourself, please.
I'm sorry. It's Chris Graham. Oh, now I kind of forgot. Anyway, I'm thinking about enforcement again. And I'm thinking about giving somebody 45 days to do what? Get rid of their bad VRBO people, or to, it's not always safety issues. It's you know, the renter tying their dog to a beer keg and the beer keg going down the road. You know, it happens. So I think enforcement, and you know how I feel about it. So I think it's a major part. Major.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
I do have one comment.
Please come on up. You got to tell us your name and address you need to have, Shar?
My name is Rebecca Wharton, and I live on Rush Lake. I spend about half the year here, and I do rent out my house for a couple weeks a year to pay my property taxes.
Sorry, what was your last name?
Wharton, W-H-A-R-T-O-N. And I want regulation. I want it. So I hope that, I understand right now there's no permitting. I have been permitted through the county, but right now there isn't one. And I do want regulation. Like a neighbor is going to open up a rental, and I hope that they're not opening it up with no rules, because that's not good for our neighborhood. So the county worked. I look forward to being in compliance with whatever you guys put in force. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you. And most people feel that way that I talk to.
I understand that there's an urgency, you know, that it'd be advantageous to work with the county, because then we can get things rolling right away. But I'm also concerned that it's not aggressive enough for our community. So that's kind of the issue.
Mark Lindner again. I agree exactly what you're saying. I don't think the county's been aggressive on it already, because in my situation, nothing was done. And I made multiple calls. And it wasn't one incident. I called the police because first time they had the party with 30 people and tents out there, and the language was like, the Effenheimer was flying and we could hear it all the time. So that's the first time. And then later on with the golf balls and the party.
Yeah, no,
it's just like nothing was done by the county. So I don't understand where the county's enforcing anything.
Thanks, Mark.
So if we do our own ordinance, we would be hiring somebody, correct?
Correct.
I think we'd have to hire more than one person, because one person isn't going to want to be on call 7 days a week. They're going to want to have their own time too. I think we just need to think about that aspect as well. To enforce, because I don't think the police are always going to be able to enforce what's going on.
I mean, that's the biggest.
But I mean, we say we're going to hire one person, and it's going to take more than one person, in my opinion.
We could have a rotating.
Deputize people?
No, you don't just deputize people. They have to have background training.
Yeah.
That's my only concern.
Bill?
Okay. Bill, come on up.
I think there needs to be adequate regulation.
Your name?
Bill Schultz, Cross Lake. I think you need to have more than enough regulation, and you have to have some teeth in your ordinance to where you get the people's attention. You were talking about $500 for the permit. I think that's grossly inadequate. You need a bunch more to finance your enforcement. I believe that 3 years for the septic systems is a big problem, you know, as far as the inspection goes. You've got people coming up from the cities, they don't know what a septic system is, they don't care, it's not theirs. They have no idea that it goes in the ground, and then if you use it too much, they're gonna take showers as long as they can, and the units are gonna fail, so they have to be inspected, I don't know, a lot more aggressively, like I would say once a year. If they wanna play or if they wanna rent their places out and play in that arena, they have to be able to meet certain standards, and that's the standards. And the chips on the life-saving stuff with fire extinguishers and smoke detectors and egress windows, there's a lot of these places that I'm sure don't have it. I don't know. I haven't been out to look at any of them, but we need to make sure that they are. We have to protect the people that are using them.
Yep, agreed.
So,
thanks, Bill.
thank you.
Okay, well, if nobody else got anything else, I think I really do appreciate you guys coming up here. Yeah, so. All right.
See both of you. Thank you.
Will there be something in place before the summer?
I am certainly hoping so. Yeah.
We're looking a minimum of 60 days from the time
And if there's nothing in
kickoff.
place, I mean, do people not have permission to do this, or?
Well, if there's nothing in place, it's Western rules, you know? It's mayhem. So that's our incentive to get something in place.
I think 3 years ago, there was nothing, so it'd be
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, will somebody make a motion to adjourn then, I guess, if we're done.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Well, I'm sure we'll have a big, good dialogue on Monday night.